Audemars Piguet causes a stir from all angles, Credor go loco with a Gerald Genta-inspired revival, and Bamford throws it back to the 70s with the Neopro homage. All this and more on today's show. Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast. I remember, there was this guy co-hosting the show, handsome looking fella, slightly shorter than me, maybe, and he bought all this amazing electronic camera gear and equipment to take to Geneva. And he said he was going to use it and take amazing photographs and send video clips and stuff to Miziel. Did it happen?
It's false. No way. Not this time. Total fabrication. It never happened.
Don't be stupid. Seriously, I carried all the kit. Did I use it? No. Did I give Miziel any photos? No. Will I probably do it again? Yes.
But anyway, moving on from that, now is a good time to tell you to play along at home. Check out the show notes that will be linked in your podcast player. Take you to our website, to a specific page for this episode. Text back, pictures, all that good stuff will be in there. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the link will be in the description. It'll take you to the same place. And we should probably crack on and get straight into things. It's weird. The last few weeks have been a bit of a blur. It's been a bit of a time warp. We've gone back to the 70s. We had Amida talking about stuff with them. We had that really cool fasted watch a couple of weeks ago. And the hits keep on coming. It turns out Bamford and AP and loads of other brands have got in the act, and it's not like they saw what happened 2 weeks ago and decided, let's give it a go, because these things take months, if not years of prep and planning. And the first one we're going to talk about is from Audemars Piguet. It's a cool looking watch. It's a little bit space age inspired, I think. It looks very 70s. It also looks very contemporary with an work, maybe a Day Bethune kind of feel to it, or a space view. But lots of people have given it a hard time, and I can't really get my head around why, so hopefully, Dave, you can fill us in.
Well, no, I'm not going to fill you in the traditional Scottish sense of filling you in.
Well, you never managed, maybe the first 3mm?
Not that kind of filling in either, but we'll leave it there. Anyway, I think this watch is really good looking, but I also think it looks somewhat like a Cybertruck. It's got this whole edgy, massive windscreen thing going on, but super cool, and for sure the 1970s seem to be back with a vengeance. Many watches that we're going to talk about today have definitely taken their inspiration from that era where I was born. And also, I think, Ricky, you might have just eked in that era as well. And also, it was the era of bin strikes when the binmen decided to not do anything. The whole country was in strike. And we came out with these marvellous designs.
I love how you go to bins because that's the favourite place for you to eat out, compared to perhaps like the gasoline petrol crisis, things like that.
No, don't worry about OPEC and all that. It was more the fact that the binmen didn't collect the bins, which meant there was just some nice ripe cheese to be had when you were a bit hungry.
There's enough cheese from last episode to do us a lifetime.
There is, yes. Let's probably leave that there. If you don't know what we're talking about, check out our back catalogue because there's plenty of interesting things you can learn about things unrelated to watching, funnily enough. Watching about things unrelated to watches.
Watching? Is that what you do with binoculars to your neighbours?
Drill a hole in the wall, don't need to.
Dave, time to talk about a film that I watched.
Oh, here we go.
It was called Disturbia.
Yes.
Here we go. I know it's an old film. I've seen it before, but I do like it. And it was on Netflix, and I thought, okay, I've not seen it for a while. Have you seen this thing, Disturbia?
I have. Just before you go on about that, yes, everyone listening, it's going to be one of those shows that we go off at tangents. We will go back to this Audemars Piguet, I promise you. But yes, Disturbia.
Right, okay, we'll leave that. We'll put a pin in it. We'll talk about the watches. Then we'll talk about all the shit films I've watched.
Right, let's get back to the watch. So this is the Master 02, or the Remaster 02 to give it its full name. Re in square brackets, not trendy round brackets, trendy square brackets. And this is an interesting little divergence, we'll say, from AP. Lots of folk jumping up and down and saying, hey, if this is the new incoming CEO's first attempt, let's get this straight. This watch has been in development for far longer than she's been at the helm of this business. This has probably been in the works for at least a couple of years. Anyway, getting back to the watching point, the Remaster collection with the first one, I believe, was in and around 2020. Obviously, 2019 being that year where the watch that they launched to say, we're not just all about the Royal Oak, that being the Cody 1159 came to life, the Remaster 01 came along. It was a bit of a re-edition of a chronograph watch, and it was much more normal, shall we say, than this one, which is somewhat, as Ricky mentioned, space-aged. Definitely very Tron-esque, come a bit Battlestar Galactica almost as well, got a wee bit of vibe of that, vibe of some of the early Imperial ships from Star Wars. Definitely got that Cybertruck thing going on. Lots of work in here though. The dial is a blue PVD dial that's then been sectored and has got some quite interesting textures and finishes on it. I think it's absolutely amazing looking. 250 pieces though, and these will be going, let's be honest, to the VIP clients of Audemars Piguet. They will not be going to the likes of myself and Ricky or any other plebs out there. But, as I said, 250 of them. Price point not absolutely insane. Price point in this, $47,200 US, which is not completely and utterly insane because it's a gold watch. You don't need to pay much less than that to be paying for a gold Omega, which I would say is a lovely watch. I own one. I love them. Not quite as prestigious possibly as a 250-piece limited edition AP re-edition. What else can we say about it? Modern movement. It has got the same movement that relaunched with the Royal Oak a mere few years ago. So it's now got a more reasonable power reserve, 52 hours. Still not setting the world on fire, but certainly better than it was before. You've got everything that you would want from this. Unusual, different, very hard to get. And it says AP all over it. I think Ricky likes it. I like it. We'll never see one. We'll probably never even get to hold one or even have the chance to buy one. But nonetheless, if you want a Cybertruck on your wrist, because it's a big lump as well, then maybe if you're good with AP, maybe if you know someone, maybe if you've spent a lot of money with them, you might not be offered one.
I think it's a cool looking watch, and I saw some people giving it a hard time. Miz posted it on our Instagram and a couple of people commented. Some people we know, some friends. Justin, who we've met over in Dubai a couple of times. Good friend of Barbara's, hails from Canada, works for a number of different publications. He said, you want to pay attention to what Armand from Starry Ballard has said about this. And in his stories, he was giving it a bit of a hard time. And I couldn't really get my head round why people were... I don't know, it's been the last couple of months, people have been niggling at things that they really shouldn't be niggling at. There's many things in the world to niggle at, and watch design, if it's not for you, bypass it, move on to something else. But it's got a cool look to it. It's got a couple of themes in it that I am not familiar with, I haven't seen before. There were the cutouts. Somebody said it looks like playing table hockey, where you've got the cutouts for the goal on the flat surface. You've got them at the 9 o'clock position and at the 12. I thought it looked okay, limited. Again, it's not a Royal Oak, it's not a diver, it's not got a Marvel cartoon character plumped onto the dial. It's something else, something different. And they had retired a couple of the previous models they had in the range a few years ago, the Jules Audemars and various other ones. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Probably will never see one. I definitely did not see one when I was in the AP boutique over in Spain, and I will get round to telling you about my cool little holiday trip over to Spain and what I got up to over there. It's fine, it's okay, it does not offend me, and all the bits and pieces that go with it, the movement technology, the case design, the costings, it's in line with everything else that AP does. Don't see a problem.
Let's move on, because we're done talking about a watch that is really cool, but you'll never see one, and you definitely won't be able to buy one. So, after that, Ricky, what should we talk about? Should we talk about watches?
We should talk about telling people that they should do things. They should like this video if they like what they see and they want to see more of it, because it helps that algorithm thing. And you should follow us by subscribing to us on YouTube. And if you're listening to the podcast, it'd be great if you left us a review, if you give us a thumbs up, if you give us a rating, depending on which platform you're on, if it's Apple Podcasts or if it's on Spotify. Everything helps us to get out to more different brands. If they hear about us, they're more likely to send us press releases and actually send us watches to check out. And my wrist check later on was going to be something, and now it has changed, because when I was having my annual bath, delivery driver turned up with something. So I'm going to do a live unboxing in the show, and even Dave doesn't know what I'm going to talk about. But what we are going to talk about is an email that we had in.
Indeed. Hi, Ricky and Dave. I've reported this seller on eBay, and Mr. Jones Watches are aware of them as well. I know you've contacted eBay, and I was hoping you could maybe help them out. They're selling custom brackets, fake versions of Mr. Jones Watches. I've seen those on AliExpress before, and I think they were trying to get them removed from there. He then gives us a link. Check out the show notes. I have a couple of Mr. Jones watches, and they're great. I don't want to see them lose business to fakes, or have these sold on as the real thing to unsuspecting people. Also, Google is ending their podcast app, which I've been using. I'm thinking of using Spotify, but which app is best for you in terms of audience figures, or are they all pretty much the same? I'm an Android user, so iTunes is not possible. Cameras. Ricky, which DJI camera did you use, or do you use? I thought you had previously said Osmo Action 4, but I recently think you said Osmo Pocket. Also, any thoughts on the Insta360 X4? Keep up the great work. Anthony. Now that is a whole podcast of answers in its own right, so we should probably start straight away.
Okay, thankfully I have got notes in front of me because my memory doesn't even have a 30-second capacity. It's like an early digital answer machine from the 90s. So let's take it in order. Mr. Jones watches fakes on eBay. eBay is the world's largest platform for pretty much everything. And they cannot, just like Google cannot filter all the results that appear on Google because it's impossible, just like YouTube cannot physically with humans work on every single thing that appears on their platform, eBay can only really attack things when they're reported, and there are report buttons on things. So I have dropped this across to our contacts at eBay, but this happens. It happened with the Moonswatch, it's happened with loads of things, and when it's an inexpensive watch, as in under a certain threshold, 500, 1,000, 2,000, it does not get the scrutiny when it's sold. And some people have actually complained. I've seen messages saying, oh look, there's a fake Rolex, definitely a fake Rolex for sale on eBay. How can they let people away with this? Well, the thing is, when the watch sells and it's over that threshold, it goes to the authentication centre. That's when it's picked up, that's when it's clobbered, that's when that product is maintained, held back, sent to the police or wherever it goes, and no money changes hands. But the listing process, that's the Wild West. And if you can come up with a better idea than what everyone else is doing, let them know. That's what I say on that front. So there we go. Google ending their podcast platform. Well, they end everything. There's a website, which we will link in the show notes, that lists everything Google has made, bought, taken over, or overhauled. And when it died, when they put it out to pasture. Remember when Google got pissed off with Facebook and they launched Google Plus and they said it's going to take over the world? Where did that end up? Remember when they've tried a whole load of other things and killed them, their messaging services, all the rest of it? Well, yeah, it was bound to happen. They rolled it into YouTube Music, I believe, and also YouTube Podcasts. But because we have a YouTube video channel, the things don't really play well together. And we wouldn't want people that are there for video content to see like an audio thing popping up and just bypassing it and then not looking at our next video upload. So it's a real Wild West in that scenario. So we recommend Spotify. It has got the best. It's got transcription services that understand our Scottish tones. I know, hard to believe, but it actually works. And you can search for specific words in there as a transcript, which is cool. You can obviously leave us a cool rating and a review, which we would appreciate. And the full back catalogue is sitting on there. So I'd recommend Spotify, cross-platform, for in the car, for on the phone, for on the PC, or the Mac and the laptop. And the last thing, quickly jumping in, camera-wise, it's the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. And I've got two of them, and they are fantastic for pretty much everything. You will see some footage from one of them later on because I was filming at an event at the weekend, not using those, using proper cameras, but because the amount of people that were in this venue, I decided to take the Pocket along just to capture the ambience of the place. So there we go, Anthony. Thanks for the multitude of questions, and we should probably crack on and talk about another revival.
Credor. And some of you, I'm sure, will say, who's Credor? Credor being the brand that sits above Grand Seiko, part of the massive industry that is Seiko watches. And Credor have pulled a little bit of something out of their archive as well, pretty much in the same way as AP did. They've looked back, but they've looked back for a famous fellow who you may have heard of, Mr. Genta, who's designed many a watch that has been reissued. Many have been homaged as well, and he's brought it back to the fore, or not so much he, but Evelyn Genta, his wife, has brought it back via the foundation that she set up a few years ago. Also check out the show notes for links to a couple of episodes where we had Evelyn Genta on the show. Definitely worth a listen. Some of the best episodes we've ever done. Anyway, back to the watch. They found a watch that was in the archives of Credor, and they brought it back alive. It is unmistakably Gerald Genta design. I think anyone looking at this can't miss the fact that Gerald Genta has had his pen and his crayons out when it came to this. It is an integrated bracelet design, albeit it doesn't have the same maybe look and feel of the total integration you might expect from something like, say, the Royal Oak or the Ingenieur. But if you look at how that bracelet attaches to the watch, it is indeed integrated. Much more rounded in terms of the shapes, very familiar shapes, but much more rounded edges than you may come to expect from something like, say, again, the Royal Oak, which tends to have quite sharp facets to it as well. I really like this. It is not a lunatic price either. Around $12,000 for this watch, which is pretty good going for a revival of a Genta design, especially one that says Credor on the dial. These are going to be available from around August. I actually really like this watch. Not so much Ricky, I'm going to guess. Probably not his vibe.
No. This is one of the Genta designs, and it was bound to happen. We heard from Evelyn, his wife, and his daughter when they were on the show a couple of times, episode 300 and 355, the only time my memory actually serves me properly. And they were talking about the fact he would design a watch every single day at the table in the kitchen. And that's at least one watch per day. So there's bound to be one that I didn't like. This one doesn't float my boat. It looks like a jewellery piece, perhaps. Something from one of the brands. Maybe a Bulgari kind of style, because they've obviously got their octos and things. Yeah, doesn't really hit the mark for me, but, they do great things. As we say with watches, if you don't like it, you don't have to put it on the floor and kick its head in. You just move on to something else that you do like.
Before we move on for that, we should give a couple more details. Size-wise, just shy of 39mm, nice and thin, under 9mm thick. It has 45 hours of power reserve. I've mentioned the price already. I've mentioned the availability already. Check out the show notes for pictures of it, because I'm sure some of you will like it. There are, though, only 300. He has a feeling these will sell out very quickly, and I bet you most of them sell in Japan. But anyway, check the show notes out for pictures. Maybe even drop us an email. Tell us how Ricky is definitely wrong and David is right when it comes to this as a Genta design. What else should we talk about? There's been another email come in, Ricky, and it's your turn to read it.
It is, and I'm going to have to get my thinking cap on, because I generally don't read things. I listen to audiobooks and podcasts. But this is a good opportunity to remind everybody, if you want to get in touch with us, perhaps you've got a comment, feedback, positive, negative, we accept it all. Sometimes we'll even read them out on the show. So if you've got something you'd like to say, or a question, or a bit of commentary on something that has happened in the past, we've got a few lined up. So drop us an email, info@scottishwatches.co.uk, and we will read it out in the show as long as we can legally. And the next one we've got in says, "Morning Ricky and Dave. I finally made reservations for a Genevan Watch Odyssey. I booked flights and accommodation so I can visit Geneva Watch Days on Saturday 31st of August and Sunday the 1st of September. I was wondering if you'd be able to spare a few minutes to write back with some do's and don'ts, as I've not been to any big watch event besides this year's Alliance Day, and with just a short time at GWD, I want to get the most out of it. From the GWD website, it looks like it isn't a ticketed event, but am I wrong? Do I need to reach out to the brands to find out where they'll be, or in your experience, are GWD good at updating closer to the event? I'm rating myself eating McDonald's all weekend, following a previous comment for Ricky about the cost of food, and I can live with that, but I just want to get everything else right and not come back kicking myself because I hadn't sought proper advice. Cheers, chaps," from Mark Jones.
I'm pretty sure Ricky, and maybe even myself, have given answers to this in the past, but let's give you a couple of quick pointers. Get yourself over there. No, you do not need tickets, especially during the day. You can pop in, you can see stuff, you can get a feel for it. Most of the brands are either immediately in and around the area. Most of them are in the hotels preceding where the big tent is. Some of the evening events are definitely ticketed, sometimes they're press only, but usually by reaching out to a brand or reaching out to the organisers, you can get your name on the list. Outside of that, go along, enjoy it. Yes, food is expensive. McDonald's is frighteningly expensive as well, but there are plenty of supermarkets. You'll always find yourself something to eat. Other than that, keep your eye on their website, because yes, indeed, they do update it nearer the time. Hopefully that answers everything that you need to know.
Very succinctly, Dave. I'll add into that, get in touch with the brand ahead of time. Reach out to them. If you've got contact, great. If not, just go on their website. If it's a smaller brand, they will get back in touch with you, because they'll be manning their email themselves probably. It's a great event. If you're there for a couple of days, you can definitely make the most of it. You didn't say where your accommodation is, but as I mentioned before, we have organised the same location as the last time, which is literally 2 streets behind Beau Rivage. And it ain't a couple of $1,000s a night, Beau Rivage prices. It is a lot more inexpensive, thankfully. But the streets just behind the main hotels is where you can pick up everything, including an STD, because that seems to be the red light district.
It definitely is the red light district, so be careful what meat sandwiches you go for that evening for your dinner.
Do's and don'ts. It seems to be quite safe, touch wood, so wearing a decent watch is okay. Be prepared if you're bringing more than one watch to explain yourself at customs. We've talked about that before. Generally behave. I don't think you would not behave, but the Swiss authorities love giving out fines for different things, especially automotively wise. We know about that from the past. So just keep it tickety-boo. Check out, if you wish, the local customs, the local regulations and laws, things like that, by going to, if you're in the UK, the gov.uk website. That'll give you all the information on travelling to different places. Check out Switzerland. Dave, you're back and forward all the time. You've not had a cavity search for a while, so how do you avoid all that?
Generally by keeping my cavity firmly shut. But yes, I would say don't bring loads of watches with you. I know it's maybe tempting. I think you said you're only coming for a couple of days. Bring one on your wrist, maybe one additional watch as well, because remember, you'll also have to either carry it about with you if you're a little bit paranoid about your safety, or make sure you've got somewhere safe to keep it. I would say if you're here for 2 days, wear a nice watch that you like wearing and just wear that one the entire time you're here. That's what I would recommend. Outside that, remember, check your passport, make sure it's in date, and make sure they've got, I think it's more than 6 months left in it, or else they will turn you around at the border and kick you straight back out. Other than that, yes, it's a very much a Western European country. Nothing is that different. Most of them speak English, but yep, just be polite and remember the Swiss are a little more reserved on a night out than maybe the average Brit is.
So this is a little bit strange. I have got a guest who we talked about on the show recently, and we're using his online platform to record because he's very security conscious, he's very security aware, and we have got a guy that runs a podcast, one of my favourites, and I've said this before, when I load up Apple Podcasts in the morning and I look to see what's there, if Risky Biz, the security podcast, is at the top of the feed, doesn't matter if it's at the top of the feed, if it's in the top bit that I can actually see on the screen, that's where I go first. And I owe a debt of gratitude to this gentleman here, because if it wasn't for his crazy podcast and the way that he talks about one of the most mundane subjects on the planet and injects humour into it, along with his co-host, I don't think I would have had the balls to take the Swiss industry by the nutsack and give it a gentle squeeze every so often. That is our podcast. So it's my great pleasure to welcome to the show somebody I've admired from a distance, as in all the way around the globe, and that is Patrick Gray from Risky Business. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great after that intro. That was very generous. Thank you.
You are the OG when it comes to podcasting. I read your bio on your website just to kind of get up to speed on things because I didn't know the background and the history. You've been a journalist for well over 20 years, almost quarter of a century it appears to be, in the InfoSec area. But this kind of crosses over into what we've been talking about recently with ransomware, Christie's being hung out to dry, I suppose you could say, and an alleged 500,000 doxing of their potential customer base. For people that maybe don't know about this kind of thing, we're going to explain what ransomware is, because we have a very intellectual and intelligent audience, a bit like yourself. They know things and they like to learn. But the first thing we want to do is find a little bit more about you, because you're actually a watch collector. When I emailed you a year ago, you got in touch to say, actually, you know, I shouldn't probably say this, but I've been into watches for a long time. So what are you wearing on the wrist today?
I'm wearing my favourite daily, which is, I think, a watch that people are sleeping on, which is the Seiko SLA 055, which is kind of begat from the 1968 diver. So it's like a modern reinterpretation of the 6159. And I guess because there's the Marine Master 200, which looks really similar, people are like, well, why am I going to pay more for one that looks similar? And the reason you'd pay more is if you get a loop and you actually look at this thing, like the build quality, the detail, it's absolutely insane. And I've just always loved Seiko design language as well. So that's the one that I chose to wear on your podcast today, Ricky.
And there you have just cemented the fact that you know about fucking watches. Well done. And there's probably the first question any listener or viewer would have for you is, does the bezel align?
Yes. Which, you know, of course I questioned its authenticity when I pulled it out of the box and I saw that that it was bang on. So I was very suspect, but no. Yeah, a quick tour with a loop and confirmed that it's authentic, despite the fact that the bezel actually aligns.
It does occasionally happen. I have noticed it once or twice myself. All right, well, we've talked about Christie's. You've obviously not listened to the podcast. I mean, you've maybe listened to a couple of them since I introduced you to it through email. But in the past, we've had guests on, probably most famously a gentleman called Juicy, and his username on Instagram is Periscope. Don't know if you've heard of him, but he goes deep when it comes to Frankenstein, fake watches. He takes auction houses to task when perhaps they've got something that isn't as legitimate as they make out in their cataloguing.
Yeah. Is this the guy who found the one that wound up in the Omega Museum that turned out to be a little bit sketch? Yeah. So I'm not on Instagram, but I did follow that whole thing. That was amazing. And didn't it turn out that there was someone inside Omega who'd done something to like franken this thing and then sell it back to Omega or something? Like there was definitely some real like shadiness there.
Lots of allegedlys, because
Yes.
we only have $10 million worth of legal cover. Swatch is bigger than that. Allegedly, it turned out that some people got into cahoots together behind the scenes at Omega, including what I think it was the museum director, one of the vice presidents, and a third unnamed person. They got together to create a watch that didn't exist. Got all the parts from various places, got the people within Omega who knew what they were doing to create it, and then they got them to authenticate it, which is pretty amazing to happen. And then they put it through the auction, and then they bought it for the museum. And the kind of word on the street was they kind of thought the reason they did it was Rolex consistently were hitting big numbers. Paul Newman Daytona, most expensive Rolex. There was one just in the last week that hit 2.5 million at the auction block, and Omega wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted a Speedmaster to be riding high with the numbers, and that's what happened there. I believe all the shareholders got a bit pissed off about it. There was an investigation, necks and chopping blocks, but we've not really heard much more about it. And everything was quiet in the auction world front until OnlyWatch reared its head, not having ran last year due to multiple reasons that we will not get into, but it came around this year, and then literally the week of it, there were problems. Christie's website disappeared, and that's where we're going to let you take up the story.
Yeah, so this is a funny one. I first heard of it, I think actually from your email, but then of course it popped up in our news feeds because we've got people here who just scour the web looking for everything that's happened in cybersecurity, and that goes into a document and filtered and whatever. And because really what our podcast is a weekly digest of the big stuff that's happened in security. And yeah, it just looked like there had been a disruption to their online auction system because of some sort of unspecified security event. And usually what that means when something like that happens, what's happened is that someone has detected some sort of intrusion, and there's either been a disruption to the systems caused by the attacker. So the attacker might deploy ransomware, and what ransomware does is it encrypts people's systems with an encryption key that the attacker keeps, and then they offer to sell that key back to you for millions of dollars, and that's the only way you're going to be able to unlock all of your systems. But quite often, in fact, almost more often, the cause of an outage is when someone detects that there's ransomware actors trying to do bad things, and they pull the pin on their systems to try to slow or stop the progress of the attack. So I'm not actually sure in the case of Christie's whether or not the attacker was trying to deploy ransomware, or whether or not they were just exfiltrating, that's the word we used, whether they were just exfiltrating data from Christie's, and the plan was to try to sell that data back to them, right? So, and that appears to be what's happened, right? Since this story broke, we've had a group of attackers pop up on one of the crime forums saying, look, we've got all of this Christie's data. We tried to sell it to them, so that we would delete it, and they weren't playing ball. So now we're going to release it in a week if they don't pay, and we'll offer it for sale and blah, 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 blah. Now, for its part, Christie's says that the type of data they got away with isn't particularly sensitive, so there's no transaction history or whatnot. So they described it as limited personal data, but we don't really know what that means because they haven't actually specified. But it looks like Christie's has decided not to pay, which 99 times out of 100 is the correct decision. And then we are probably going to see this data released at some point, and then we'll know whether or not Christie's is right about the nature of the data that was actually stolen from its system. So in a nutshell, that's the story. Of course, the dangerous thing would be if Christie's entire database got walked, you would have a list of very expensive items bought at auction and where they are located and who owns them. And we have seen data thefts previously that are similar. One that I think, the one that comes to mind is we've seen a couple of like firearms registration databases stolen in the past and leaked, and obviously you don't really want a list of where all the guns are, just plastered all over the internet, because then unscrupulous people who might want guns that are not registered to them might just decide to go and, steal one from one of the addresses where a firearm is registered. So, that's the concern with the Christie's stuff, and, soon enough we'll know the nature of the data that has been taken. But at the moment, Christie's seem to be saying, don't worry about it. It's nothing.
Is that the common response when something like this happens? People, I don't know, it's like a cheating spouse gets caught and they keep denying it, and then something is pulled up in front and they go, yeah, well, I did that, but didn't do anything else. Is that kind of the way things usually go?
Sometimes you get companies that try to minimize, they say, oh, it's nothing, and it turns out to be something, but that always blows up on people. So most companies have learned that you can't lie about this because it just makes a bad situation worse. We've seen cases of extremely sensitive medical information being taken. In fact, I mean, here in Australia, we had a really big incident. Was that last year? Medibank Private, which is a large health insurer here, and all of their claims database got stolen. And as a way to put pressure on Medibank to pay, the attackers started compiling lists of really sensitive health insurance claims for things like pregnancy, drug and alcohol rehab services, because these are claimed against private health insurance. And they started putting that information into spreadsheets and releasing it as a way to really put pressure on Medibank to pay. That backfired big time because all of a sudden there was a lot of political will in the Australian federal government to really do something about this. And the person who did that is actually now sitting in a Russian prison, which was an amazing turn of events, let's put it that way. The Australian government activated the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Signals Directorate, which is our equivalent of the USA's National Security Agency or the UK's GCHQ. And somehow Russian authorities became aware of crimes that this guy had also been committing within Russia, and he has been arrested. So, yeah, I mean, this is just, ransomware, data extortion, it has been such a big thing for the last 5 years. And it is interesting seeing Christie's sort of caught up in this, right? Where there's such a big, staid, old brand with such, rich and powerful customers, and then you see this happen, and all of a sudden you've got an entirely different group of people sort of thinking about this issue, which is, I think that's the interesting thing for me, is like people who just haven't necessarily thought about this a lot have realized, wow, this stuff affects me too.
It's a little bit like during the pandemic in the early stages when the Swiss industry recognised that they weren't going into the office that week or that month or that year. And they had to come to terms with computers and webcams and microphones. And up until that point, we had difficulty convincing CEOs and founders of companies to come onto the podcast remotely.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they had to have better websites. They had to have online selling, e-commerce, and they were dragged from the 1700s into the 21st century. And I think Christie's and a few of the other auction houses, the older they are, the more they lie in their heritage, the more difficult it is to bring them up to date. And that's why eBay has been wiping the floor with them recently when it comes to online sales and authentication and things. But one of the anecdotes, or one of the things I'd heard, and I'm pretty sure it was on your podcast, was that the amount of money that has been generated, say, in the last 12 months or in a rolling 1 year period, the amount of money that's been paid for ransoms, because a lot of people do pay it, kind of totals more than the entirety of every bank robbery, all the money added together across all time. We're talking hundreds of millions, billions potentially paid every year in this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staggering amount of money that gets taken in these attacks. But I think also you got to realize that this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to ill-gotten gains on the internet. So say ransomware is 10 billion a year or something, right? I don't even know if that's the number, right? I just say it's 2-3 billion, whatever. Like, we only have so much insight into how much money these people get. But then you look at different categories of cybercrime, like one we call business email compromise, where someone will intrude into someone's email system, pretend to be either a supplier or a staff member or something, and eventually convince them to change bank account numbers and things like that, so payments start getting redirected. The losses to business from business email compromise, which is far less exotic a crime type, are staggering. And then you've got the stuff we call, pig butchering, which is stuff that these days is mostly being run out of Southeast Asia, around Myanmar, Laos, a couple other places, just along the sort of Chinese border there. And again, the crime in those three countries, there's China, there's Myanmar, Laos, and I forget the third country. I think it might be Vietnam. I can't remember. But the amount of fraud income generated in that little region, in this sort of tri-border area, is equivalent to something like 40% of the GDP of those countries combined. We are talking a staggering amount of money, and the people who are perpetrating these crimes are actually being to those places and held against their will and forced to commit fraud, right? So they will apply for an advertisement that's been listed on a job ads page in the Philippines or something. They turn up, they get taken away to one of these compounds and forced to do this stuff. So ransomware, I think, gets a lot of attention because it's kind of a flashy crime, right? You're talking about, famously the Colonial Pipeline in the United States, an oil pipeline company. They were disrupted. You've got huge stores of medical information being extorted. Things like this, certainly generate the headlines, and the impact is quite severe. But if you just look at the raw money, the money's actually not in ransomware, which gives you an idea of the scale of fraud on the internet problems. It's staggering. It's mind-boggling, Ricky.
And this is why I like listening to your show, because it sounds on the top level boring. Like watches, who cares about watches? But here we are twice a week recording a show about them and doing quite well out of it. And I would tell anybody that's got any passing interest in computing, tech, IT, or security matters to check out Patrick's show, because it is a laugh a minute. And you recently recorded a live show in front of folks, and I could hear them all giggling from the different rows of the audience. So definitely one to check out. Before we let you get on your way, because this is 9 a.m. your time, just past midnight my time, tell us a little bit more about your watch collecting journey then, because we always like to get a little bit of information from guests that are on the show. So apart from the Seiko, what other things tickle your fancy?
Well, so my dad is into old clocks, right? And he's got a collection of old American pocket watches. And he just always used to collect them. And I remember, I just sort of had a bit of an interest in mechanical timekeeping growing up around that. And then I think when I was a little kid, they gave me just an old mechanical watch. It was just lying around. I said, can I play around with that? And I just wound up sort of pulling it to bits and trying to figure out how it worked and stuff. So I've just always found, little mechanical devices fascinating. I did engineering at university. I've just got one of those sorts of brains. And yeah, I always wanted some nice ones one day, just sort of something high quality and casual is just kind of what appeals to me. And I think my first... and people will probably listen to this and say, oh, that's not a nice watch. But I think probably the first one that I bought that I really loved was one of those 1970s Seiko Bellmatics, which just a beautiful, funky 70s design. And I absolutely loved that thing. But then I've bought and sold a bunch since then, all sorts of things. But I live quite near the beach. So I live in a coastal town in Australia, and we swim 8 months of the year. So typically I usually have a dive watch strapped to my wrist, and I will absolutely wear it in the surf and in the water because that's what they're for. Mostly I collect. I tend to have in my possession sports watches. I have the closest thing I have to a dress watch is one of those, those little Omega 120s from the 90s. So they're 120 meter water resistant, 36 mil, but they've got a screw down crown, and they're sort of a dress sports watch, but they're 36 mil. I think the reason, and they're very cheap, and I think it's because the bracelet is hideous. So you just get one of them, throw away the bracelet, put a strap on it, and it's quite nice. But yeah, I mean, really anything that I can wear while I'm swimming is basically the criteria for me.
Turns out you're in the right part of the world to do that kind of thing. Here in Scotland, not so much. The water isn't on the ground for us, it's coming from the heavens. But I'm going to have to let you go now because you have a day ahead of you. I've got some sleep ahead of me, but it's been fantastic having you on. And in the future, if there's something else that kind of breaks and it merges between the two realms, would you be up for coming back on?
100%. I'd really enjoy it. Thank you.
Before you disappear, tell everybody where they can check you out X, Instagram, website, and podcast platforms.
Yeah, so you can head to risky.biz/subscribe to find the podcast feeds if you're interested. Like, again, it's very niche stuff. It's mostly produced for people who work in the security discipline, but I do know plenty of people who are outside of the field who do enjoy it as well, just because, you know, they feel like they're getting a bit of an insight into a world that they previously just didn't know existed. So, you know, go check it out. We've also got some newsletters at news.risky.biz and on X, which I still call Twitter. I'm just Risky Business, one word.
I will cement and underline what I said. It sounds like a boring subject, but it's actually quite funny. And when Patrick's speaking with his co-host Adam about things, there's been an ingenious hack. Maybe it's cost a company a few million or billion. He goes, you got to hand it to them. So I love that kind of shit. So I'm going to let you get on with your day, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Ricky.
Hopefully that answered most of the questions. And as a little aside, the news today, as we're recording this, a mere few days before you'll be listening to it, said that the deadline has passed and the information has not been put out onto the interwebs yet. So let's see where that leads. Maybe they're in negotiations. Who knows? All of this, of course, is up in the ether. Nobody knows what's really happening. But anyway, moving on to more of those wedgy, edgy 1970s shaped watches. Bad boy Bamford's been at it again.
He has. And this is a watch that I like. And it's not out just yet. And it comes in at 699 quid. So it is a considered purchase. But it's far cheaper than that bloody casquette thing that you keep going on about. Oh, I got a great deal on it. Yeah, well, that's because nobody else wanted it. But this is cool. I like it. It's a little bit Boulevard Computron, or I think that's the name of it. The cool little LED thing that came out in multiple variations, including a really cool microchip version that I liked but never bought. Yeah, I like this, and it's in the flair and the styling of the recent, well, the Amida release that we spoke about quite recently, and various other watches of that ilk. So run us through the details, because Bamford didn't bloody tell us anything about this when he was on the show a few weeks ago.
He didn't. So this is a Neopro, which is a look-back reimagining of a Neopro watch from back in the day. What can I say about it? Again, very edgy. Think Cybertruck. In fact, think even more Cybertruck than the AP. It's an LED-based time display. It uses a rechargeable battery, so it's not little cell batteries, it's a rechargeable battery a la Apple Watch, for example. And interestingly, the light comes on for, I believe, 4 seconds before it then goes off again. You have to press the button to activate it, a bit like the casquette. That said, on this one, you can actually determine how long the light stays on for. Anywhere from 4 seconds up to staying on permanently. And there's where it bites. The battery, recharge it, leave the LED time on full time. How long does the battery last, Ricky?
69 minutes.
No, a little bit longer, but a mere 10 hours. In fact, maybe just longer than a go to work, come back, go out in the evening. That said, if you don't turn it on at all...
Is this Schrodinger's battery capacity?
This is a bit of a delta there between never using it and always using it, but hey, we'll go with that. I think what that will mean is, if you look at your time a couple of times a day, 10 times a day, whatever you do, the battery will probably last you a good few weeks. It sounds by the sounds of things. I think that makes sense. You know what I mean anyway. I really like this. It's super cool, super edgy, super sci-fi. Comes in a nice aluminium slidey out sci-fi type secret container. Very Bamford. He's very good at his packaging. One thing he's extremely good at is shoving a good package in your face.
Is it quite a big package, or has he been economically friendly this time?
I mean, it's a big, girthy black cylinder being shoved in your face. I mean, I don't know whether you do or don't like that. You may like it, you may not. Maybe once you try it, you don't go back. Who knows?
That's a whole different category on websites.
It is. And he'll need to, I would be interested to see how he positions this. But I've already messaged him and said, I'm definitely buying one of these because it's actually really cool. It's right up my street. I think it's probably up your street. As to whether you want to spend that money that you're meant to be saving for a house, that's a very different question. But yes, really cool watch. Bamford does it again. He's a man that can pull something weird out the back catalogue and make it cool to trot.
Indeed he can. And Bamford do a lot of things with Bremont. And I've been reaching out to Sarah from Bremont a number of times, and I don't know if she's died because she never seems to get back to me. So Sarah, if you're listening, drop us a message because I'm trying to get in touch with you and you seem to be ignoring me, and that's a bad idea because I run a podcast. Anyway, time to do that thing that is called a wrist check. And Dave, I'm going to have to make you go first because my wrist check, as I mentioned earlier, is going to turn into an unboxing. So you have to go first and tell us what you've got on the wrist today.
Well, I had to make a very quick change because, as you can see, I'm back in the holding cell known as Barrage in Beale. And I've been trotting around today wearing a watch all day that has just become part of me. The challenging thing is we've not released that watch yet, so I very nearly wore the watch and showed a watch that would have been a bit of a faux pas. So at the last minute, I had to.
When is it out?
It depends when you put it in as to when you take it out, Ricky. But, if you're asking when does the watch launch, it launches in around 2.5 weeks from when you're listening to this podcast.
But can we not just get a little bit of a sneaky peek? That's what we kind of do in the show. I mean, we can get away with breaking an embargo because you work there. You can just go in and edit the doc file to the date and pull it back a couple of weeks and go, Andy, what are you talking about?
I guess on the basis that Andy probably has no idea the dates because he doesn't, I'd be actually waggling the finger at myself saying, you very naughty boy, why did you break your own embargo? But no, I'm not going to do it because I very nearly did do it. And if I do it, it's all over. It's game over if I do it because I think that's called nepotism. Not a great thing. But anyway, it's very spacey. We'll leave it there. Very spacey. What am I wearing though? Because you have to get to an unboxing. I'm wearing my trusty Jetstream Grey Superseed GMT prototype with orange strap that has not missed a beat. No serial number on it, because scrub off those serial numbers, bit dodgy me, bit ooh, bit ah. Yes, but that's what I've been wearing, which I haven't really been wearing, but I can't tell you what I've been wearing. So let's move on to something infinitely more exciting. Ricky's going to get his fingers in a box.
So this is a genuine unboxing. I do know what's in here, but I've not opened it. You can see it has still got the sticky tape on the back. So let me extract my Swiss-made Swiss Army knife, legit, made in Switzerland. And let's see if I do not do anything that's going to require surgery and a visit to the A&E. Legit unboxing. Oh, they've changed their packaging. The folks at Cassie, they've gone all eco-friendly. That looks like the kind of thing you pee in when you're in hospital. Right, anyway, that's them never sending us a watch to review again. Little cloth cover, little watch thingy. And if I take this out... So here we have a watch that was released quite recently. And I thought, you know what? This reminds me of the new movie posters for Wolverine Deadpool. It has got that X in the background that you can see if you're looking in the video on YouTube. And it plays along the Cassie Oak vibe. Now, obviously, some people weren't quite happy with the terminology Cassie Oak. We do not work for G-Shock. We do not work for Casio. We can say what the hell we like. But this is actually really good, quite space age looking. Obviously check the show notes to see what we're talking about, and as you can see if you're watching the video, the actual model number of this one is the GA2300. The one I have got here has got some very nice loomed orange hands with a grey to sort of dark anthracite colouring, and the buttons actually stick out so far that they're going to be easy to utilise compared to the original 2100 series. Now, they've done a few different variations of the Cassie Oak style. I bought a couple of them last year. I know Simona's got a couple herself. You've got tons of them. They're ever popular. And this one just, I don't know, is even more futuristic, even more space age. Have you had a look at this one? Do you own one of these, Dave? Have you already got one of these in the collection?
There may be a pink one, a bright pink one that I may have already acquired. Again, these coming in at the more affordable end of the watch spectrum, I believe in and around the £99 if you're in the UK, probably very similar in euros and dollars as well. I said as well, and I've been trying so hard to not say it, and I've beaten myself at my own game. Anyway, moving on, this one we are looking at here with Ricky is one of the more toned down colour palettes that's available, but there's some very day-to-day wearable colours and some less day-to-day wearable colours, as you would expect from G-Shock. Another great addition to the range, bit more avant-garde, bit more punchy than the original Casio, which definitely fall more into the mainstream style that you would expect from G-Shock.
Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about this new watch because it's super comfortable. It's incredible. The actual, I don't know what they've done with the material. It's not rubber, it's not silicone, but it actually feels really good, better than the resin, better than you can see in the pictures. It's a matte effect, as if it's almost a blend. It actually wears really nice, and it contours fantastically well on the wrist. Have you got yours yet? Is yours on order? Is it on its way?
Mine is sitting at home, not Switzerland home, Scotland home. So I will be back later this week. In fact, the very day that most people will be listening to this as it launches is the day that David will be flapping his wings heading back towards the frozen north, and hopefully he'll have a bright pink little surprise, and hopefully a other model that they released very recently, that being a sketch-orientated model, should...
Hold on a minute, Dave. Could that be what's here?
That could be there.
It turns out Dave didn't spot, and I didn't spot. There were two boxes. I actually thought that the main box was going to have the thing and you moved it to the other one, but it turns out there's two boxes. Could we possibly have what? We do have what I was expecting. Not what turned up, but what I was expecting. So this is a double unboxing. And there it is. There's your big ticket item. There's the little guy I was looking forward to seeing. Da, da, da. This is the Sketch-alike, the manga series, based upon the look and feel of many Japanese comic books. This is, I don't think it's even out yet, because I had a look at their website to see what the sketch was, what the story was, and it wasn't listed as being available. It was coming soon. But this one here, this is the original 2100 series with bells and whistles, and this is really cool. This is like your D1 Milano, but just at another level.
This is archetypally G-Shock, and I think they've absolutely blown it out of the park. Some amazing colours. This one I would probably describe as baby blue. Also, they have a extremely handsome, fetching, very nice green colourway, which is the one that David very much likes.
Yeah, so double unboxing, double wrist check almost. I will put it on the wrist shortly. I know how this is going to wear, I know how it's going to feel. It's actually far more legible than the originals that I've got, including the modded one. Because this is the original 2100 series, it's not quite as easy to depress the buttons on the side. A little bit more tricky versus that other one I just talked about a second ago. But this is the one I was waiting for. They did promise to send it, and I'm super happy it has arrived, because blue is my colour, and I'm going to be wearing this out over the next few days, because allegedly it's going to be sunny in Scotland yet again. So there we go, a couple of fantastic watches literally arrived maybe an hour ago as I was getting ready for this show. So my previous wrist check idea ain't going to be. So Miziel, you're just going to have to delete what I put in those show notes that I sent across to you. So just giving a little bit more information on this release here. I'm kind of bubbling because I've been looking forward to this for so long. Yeah, this is even better in real life than I thought it would be, but I should have expected that, because when G-Shock do things and they do it to this level, it is always far and away better than expected, better than pictures, renders and video clips would do it justice. The model number for this one, for anyone that's interested, is the GA-2100 MNG. And then there is some numbers afterwards. The blue colourway is -2AER, coming in at 139 quid. Not sure if it's available, because as I said, it says coming soon on the website. Running through the spec, if you know the G-Shock Casio, it is 2100 that you know and love. 200 meters of water resistance, plus or minus 15 seconds per month. All kinds of bells and whistles, 5 daily alarms, and it's got a little speech bubble that points at the day of the week, which is a lot easier to see than previous iterations. This one has got maybe 3 years of battery life. I have got Casio from when they first came out, and they are still displaying and showing the time. The battery life is a lot reduced on models that have got the mechanical hand, because there's obviously a motor inside that's got to drive them over and above the oscillating quartz crystal and the LCD display there. But this has got everything you want in it. Usual countdown, 24 hours. It's got world time functionality. You can set your home time, your away time, and all the bells and whistles that you would totally expect. So absolutely love this. Expect it to feature on the wrist in the future. It will be on our Instagram, it will be on the website, it will be in the show notes, and it will be in our YouTube video. Now, Dave, what are we doing next?
What are we doing next, Ricky? I think you know the answer to this, which is, what have you been up to?
Well, Dave, I've hogged the limelight with the new watch that's just come in to check out. Look how cool it looks with the background here and the colour scheme. I think you should tell us what you've been up to first.
Well, that's going to be not so long.
Double your penis.
Well, yes. Not that long.
Like Atamant.
Not
adamant.
Atamant. Was it up and away we go? Something like that, he used to say. I remember that cartoon. Now, that's a blast from the past. 1980s, 1990s. Come back and save us, please. Anyway, what have I been up to? I've been in Switzerland. I've been working. I was even working all over the weekend. Oh, woe betide me. But no, it's absolutely fine. I've not been up to a huge amount. I have been out taking some photographs, mostly of watches, getting slightly better. So there's a very, very slim chance that I might actually take some photos and give them to Miziel Probably not, though. Outside of that, I have been doing absolutely nothing other than sleeping, eating, and working. So that is very, very boring. Ricky, you've been at some gigs and at some loud, shouty concerts. Tell me more.
We talk about time travel a lot in this episode and previous ones, back to the 70s. Well, I'm going to go back to the 90s, the era of rave music. And historically, for the past X amount of years, every year, apart from when the pandemic was here, I would go and I would do filming for a local band that had a bit of success nationally and internationally called TTF. If you're in Scotland, you know who I'm talking about. If you're in England, perhaps you do. Maybe further afield, not so much. But they have moved from small gigs over the past 20 plus years to different venues, and they hit the big ticket item, the big arena tour, this year by going to the Hydro in Glasgow, which I believe is either the biggest or the second biggest concert venue, custom concert venue within the country, apart from using stadiums like Hampden. And I went along and there was over 9,000 people crammed in listening to all the artists of the 90s, not just TTF, but they brought along friends like Too Unlimited, like Snap, like Corona, like Ultra Beat, all these guys that you may have heard of in the past, and depending on what age you are, you may still be listening to when you go to the gym or you're in the car. So I went along there, actually took Gav, our video editor, because he is a videographer as well. That's how I know him from the past. He helped me in multiple projects across the years, and we went across to this event. Took Simona with me for her first experience of a rave. Don't think she enjoyed it too much, but now she knows what I used to get up to before podcasting. It was a good night. I enjoyed it. Got lots of filming done. There was a few scary moments because it was a new venue, hadn't been there filming before, but everybody loved it. The tunes were great, the visuals were great, the stage show was great. They had a guy in a robot costume doing robotic moves and breakdancing on the stage. They did all kinds of stuff. It was great fun. So there'll be a couple of clips and you'll see the scale of it and the kind of shit I used to do in the past. Apart from that, went a wander down to see Martin at Martin's of Glasgow. I haven't seen him in a while, and going into his emporium is like walking into the set of Friday the 13th, the series, a thing I used to watch on ITV back in the day, I suppose, back in the 90s here in the UK. And you would walk in and there'd be crazy stuff here, crazy stuff there. More recent version of that would be Annabelle sitting in a glass cabinet in one of those Conjuring movies where you've got all these little artifacts that are haunted. That's like on in Martin's place. Don't know if it's haunted, but he certainly has a haunted mind. So to chat with him, then we ended up at the Argyle Arcade in Glasgow again. Not been there this year, I don't think. Popped in to see a few familiar faces, got to see some cool watches, and that was pretty much it. On TV, not a lot has been happening. Mentioned Disturbia at the start of the show. Great movie, one to watch if you've not seen it. A little bit Alfred Hitchcock, Rear Window, I think that's what it's based on. But yeah, good one to pass the time. And catching up on things of the past, I was watching a compilation of clips of Dennis Pennis, an absolute menace that appeared in UK shores on television in the 90s, where he proclaimed to be a BBC reporter. He was actually working for a BBC show at the time, but he would grab celebrities on the red carpet and ask them horrific questions or give horrific statements, of which we cannot repeat them on the show, but they will be linked in the show notes. And that is pretty much it, I think, Dave.
Well, there we go. So for a change, the two of us are not rabbiting on about a whole load of nonsense that's absolutely nothing to do with watches. And I think we're about to run out of time. So it does leave us to, Ricky, maybe you should do it because I did it last time.
And that is it. That is the end of our show. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We're out twice a week. Follow us on Instagram at Scottish Watches. If you want to go through the back catalogue, check out the website, obviously scottishwatches.co.uk there. And there are tons of great episodes. Most recently, we had Andrew Morgan from Andrew Morgan Watches, previously of Watchfinder. He flew the coop 3 months ago. We decided to take his pulse, see how things were going, see if the stabiliser had been taken off. Coming up soon, we have the dial artist, somebody quite local that I'm about to record a show with after this episode, and I'm looking forward to it because he does great things. We have had a watch in that has not been off my wrist until today, and I want to talk all about that, so that'll be out shortly, potentially at the start of the week. And in the back catalogue, we've had Bamford, we've had Barbara, we've had loads of people. We had the folks from Christopher Ward talking about 12X, in particular Mike France, giving his take on things as I kind of waded in quite deep on the subject, and Jody from Just One More Watch taking his temperature to see how Airbus has been coming along. That is it. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.